Over here we are looking at molecules that contains 4 charge clouds. A bond contains 2 electrons, so it's a charge cloud, and also lone pairs contains 2 electrons, so we also count them as a charge cloud. So over here, the black is carbon, the white is hydrogen, the blue is nitrogen, and the red is oxygen, and you can see methane on the left, ammonia in the middle, and water on the far right. And the lone pairs are shown by those green lobes that contains 2 electrons. So here we are looking at methane. Each bond between the carbon and the hydrogen counts as a charge cloud. We have 4 bonds, and therefore we have 4 charge clouds. In this case, the electronic geometry is tetrahedral as well as the molecular geometry is tetrahedral. Here we are looking at ammonia, and you can see there are 4 charge clouds. Each bond between the nitrogen and the hydrogen counts as a charge cloud, so we have 3 bonds, so we have 3 charge clouds coming from bonds, and then we also have the lone pairs. That's that green lobe, and that also counts as a charge cloud. So we have 4 charge clouds in total, 3 coming from the bonds and 1 coming from the lone pairs. So when we look at the electronic geometry, it is also tetrahedral because of that lone pair being present. So we have 4 charge clouds, and therefore the electronic geometry is tetrahedral. But now remember, when you look at the molecular geometry, we cannot see that lone pair. We can only see the atoms. But now that charge cloud is influencing your geometry. So therefore this geometry is trigonal pyramidal. If it was without the charge cloud, if we had a charge cloud of 3, it would have been trigonal planar. But now we do have this lone pairs, so even though you can't see the lone pairs, it does impact your geometry. So the electronic geometry is tetrahedral, but we cannot see the lone pair, but it has an influence on the shape of your molecule, and therefore the resulting molecular geometry is trigonal pyramidal. Here we are looking at water, and water also has 4 charge clouds. Now we are counting 2 charge clouds coming from the bonds between the oxygen and the hydrogens, and we have 2 charge clouds coming from the lone pairs, those green lobes. Because of the 4 charge clouds, our electronic geometry is tetrahedral. But when we look at the molecular structure, we cannot see those lone pairs, and the molecular geometry is bent. Those charge clouds are not part of the molecular geometry, but they do affect the molecular geometry. Without those charge clouds, our geometry would have been linear. But with the charge clouds, our molecular geometry is bent or V-shaped. So when we are looking at the molecular geometry or determining the molecular geometry, the first thing is to do is obtain the electronic geometry, and then from that we deduce the molecular geometry.